Can you just summarize really quickly for the audience where you want to take Brooks, which is primarily known as a brand of running shoes for serious runners. And you've got some ambitions to expand the aperture. So just share that with us.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me and happy to be here. So if you don't know Brooks, we're a 110-year-old company, the oldest American sporting goods company here in the US. And we've been on a journey as a company over probably the last 30 years to focus specifically on the sport of run and even more specifically performance run. So we focus on kind of the upper echelon in our category, higher price points and the like. And what we've seen over that 30-year journey is it's all of our success is rooted first and foremost in the participation of health and wellness around the world. And you're probably seeing it in your communities. It is absolutely booming right now. I've been in the industry 27 years and never seen a running boom like we're seeing right now. Brooks sits right in the middle of that. We're the #1 brand here in the US in performance run, and we are expanding globally. And it really comes from an intense strategy that we kind of tag as sharp focus creates mass appeal. And so this pinnacle performance positioning has really opened us up to anyone that moves. And that's why I say if you run, you walk, or you go to the gym, you're our customer. And so we've had incredible success. We've had about 15% compounded annual growth rate over a 24-year period, rooted in that sharp focus. And we believe that we're kind of just getting started. We're 85% of our revenue comes out of the US. So the next chapter for us is global expansion, and running's expanding globally right now.
Yeah, and I think the company overall which is part of Berkshire Hathaway, it's just north of $1 billion in sales, and some of your competitors are a multiple of that. So obviously there's some room for you. Some of that involves international, some of that involves more lifestyle products. New Balance should not have the monopoly on dad shoes, right? So I'll get back to that in a sec. So I guess my first question is, you're primarily, until recently, running shoes that are sold at running stores. Now you want to sell in more countries, you want to sell more products, you want to sell more apparel, and you have some designs on having more of your own, what's in retail called direct-to-consumer, so your own website and some stores as well. That's going to have implications on operations, and you happen to be a former COO. So you can tell us a little bit about how you're going to retool the company operationally so it can cast a much wider net and not get lost in it.
Yeah, I mean, running is it's unique in this way. It's a very local sport. Think about any sport. You have to either drive to a gym or a court or a field to go and do a certain ball or bat sport. Running, you step out of your house, and so we always think about how local running is around the world. We say that there's probably 10,000 communities around the world where running is having its day. And so what we try to do is really build a multi-channel strategy. And what that means is we want to assort our brand, sell our brand, wherever the greatest retailers are that are focused on run. And that creates complexity at an operational level because we don't own the systems of these retailers. We don't own the distribution networks, the transportation networks. So what we've had to do is build an operation that really taps in and has agility into all of these partners around the world. Direct-to-consumer is kind of our future in terms of developing that channel. That will create complexity as well. But we've already done what I think is the hardest thing, which is servicing, call it 10,000 retailers around the world through our operations network. So my new COO doesn't love it when I say that. The easy part's coming, but it truly is. And so we're trying to wire this thing where if running's assorted in a retail store, we want to be there and we want to service it in a really high service environment.
So one of the things that's very difficult, I think people who are not in the consumer and retail space underestimate how difficult it is to get into footwear or get into apparel. You know, I'll name names, I'm a reporter, but like Under Armour stumbled with its running shoes, and you would think, why? You know, they have all the resources there. You guys make very nice running clothes, but you're not a big player yet. And so can you maybe just explain quickly to the audience why sometimes, you know, intuitively you'd think it shouldn't be so difficult for a company, and yet it is difficult?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest secret in building performance running footwear, specifically, I'll get to apparel in a second, is 500 people touch our products from the material vendor to when we put it in a box and ship it to a retailer. So just let that sit in. We used to always talk about handcrafted Italian loafers. Handcrafted performance footwear is real. It takes intention, it takes process. And one of the reasons there's so many hands in that is over the years, labor was so cheap that you could have that many people doing that. But what has happened over the time is that Southeast Asia has become the hub to build the best running shoes in the world. And so we've been able to tap into that. We have partners in Asia for 25 years now that are just fantastic at making performance running gear. We're on a journey in apparel. You know, the difference between footwear and apparel is if you're a runner, the footwear purchase is a considered purchase. You go through a fit cycle, you know exactly what you want, and every detail matters. In apparel, it's more of an emotional purchase. That brand on your sleeve or your pocket is an expression of yourself in some ways. And so it's less of a considered purchase. It's also more commoditized. You can go to just about any retailer and get pretty good performance products. So we're on a journey there. We've got incredible products in apparel. It'll be the next chapter for Brooks.
So you, just like Scott from Chipotle before, who was on stage before, was the COO before becoming the CEO. You did the same trajectory. I think one of the things, you know, I covered retail for a very long time. I think there was a fad about 10 years ago as retailers and consumer brands really were worried about Amazon and our e-commerce infrastructure isn't up to snuff. So there was a lot of CEOs who suddenly became CEOs in retail land, whereas there used to be, you know, the merchant, the product people, you know, the people who have that intuition. What I'm getting at is, what advice can you give to the prospective future CEOs here who are COOs? Make sure that they have both sides of their brains, you know, the operational left side and the more intuitive that you might need in a consumer-facing. You know, you need both, right?
Yeah. I use this saying with my team that head above the clouds, feet in the mud. And what I mean by that is, you know, at a COO level or a CEO level, you're always focused on what we call Horizon 2, kind of 3 years out. I think my job as CEO is if we stumble in 3 years, that's on the CEO. And so I'm always trying to keep my head above the clouds and yet still base myself in reality and securing the short term, which is feet in the mud. And that transition from COO to CEO, you get less of your feet dirty at times, and you're really trying to see above the clouds. You know, I had good advice from Berkshire Hathaway over the years, and when I moved into this role, one of the best advice I got was to understand your biases as you move into new roles, specifically in the CEO role. I grew up at Brooks, 27 years there, had many different roles, so I have a lot of biases in what I think I know about each function. And as a CEO, I think you have to hold balance and equity in your frameworks and mental models so that you don't lean on maybe past experiences from 3-4 years ago that this is how I did it when I was in that role. So it's an understanding your biases and then really thinking long term as you move into the CEO role.
So runners are intensely, fanatically loyal to specific models and brands and shoes. You know, when you guys discontinued one of your models a few years ago, I went into mourning. And
I think you called us.
I called Jim Weber, your predecessor. I did not win. But anyway, how do you get customers, especially runners? This is on their feet. This is everybody's thinking, if I had, that shoe prevents me from getting injuries. How do you get people who might be, you know, in love with Hoka and On and New Balance to give you guys, you know, they all know that Brooks are great shoes, and I also know ASICS is a great, like, how do you get people to give you guys a try when people are so fiercely loyal?
Yeah, I think, you know, over the years in our industry, it was really hard to get people to switch brands. I think that's changed in call it the last 5 to 6 years for a lot of reasons. One, there's a lot of parity in product. There just is. There's a lot of great product out there. I often say that choosing a running shoe's a bit like choosing your favorite wine. Everyone has a different year, a different vintage, and they kind of go back to that and they try and find it. And so right now we're in a unique era where there's great product from everyone. So then what is the value prop for the consumer? And, you know, there's a lot of detail on fit, feel, ride, and consistency in product season after season. We update our product every 12 months. And so we've been able, over a 20-plus year period, to be very consistent in our fit. And so if you love that varietal of the glycerin that Phil wears, that you're going to get that fit every single time. And that comes from long-term manufacturing relationships, comes from sweating the details on fit, feel, ride. You know, on a marathon, mile 22 really matters if your shoe's going to work. And we spend every day trying to figure that out for the runner. So consistency in our industry is the most important thing. And innovation can't disrupt that consistency. So innovation's moving really fast in materials and midsoles and the like. And you know, we've been able to keep innovation coming without, you know, really impacting the consistency of our fit, feel, and ride.
Okay, so a quick final question for you. I mentioned Jim Weber, whom you succeeded last year. He was there for more than 20 years. Basically, he saved Brooks, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy, or I forget. What do you want to do for Brooks?
Yeah. Well, I was super lucky at Brooks. I studied under Jim Weber, who was the modern day founder of this strategy, and as Phil said, really set us on a path for growth. You know, our next version is expanding this brand around the world. As I said, 85% of our revenue comes out of the US. We're mostly footwear. And we have now permission to expand this brand. What's happening in running right now is super interesting. Participation rates around the world are skyrocketing. I was in China 2 weeks ago. The stat that we were told was there were 40 marathons in 2020. There's 450 marathons in China. So this brand is just getting started, and it'll be expansion mode for us.
All right, well, on that note, go for a run tomorrow at 5 in the morning when it's 70, and stay healthy. So join me in thanking Dan for being with us today. Thank you.